Talk briefly about the election of Hamas and what happened after that, because the U.S. Called for elections in Gaza, and they got them, and then what happened?
It's a little bit, isn't it, like Haiti, Venezuela? We could look around the world, right? Beware of calling for elections if that's not what you want. Well, United States in Israel, supporting Israel, no matter what they do, apparently, had a 20-year campaign to destroy Fatah, right, to destroy the PLO. PLO collaborated, I think, in that destruction with their own corruption and autocratic rule. But, they demanded elections in Gaza. Why Gaza should be separated from the rest of the West Bank, nobody knew, but that was Israel's strategy. And I think the people of Gaza voted, who knows, they voted for Hamas, perhaps because the PLO was so corrupt, perhaps because Hamas seemed disciplined and good at charitable provisions of education and food and health care. Perhaps, in defiance of Israel. Who knows? They voted for Hamas. Hamas government took over, and I think there was a moment there where the question, if anybody really wanted peace in the area, there was an opportunity. There were certainly forces within Hamas who wanted to become part of civil society and were willing to break with the past that was, drive them into the sea, anti-Israel position. On the other hand, I think in a way they need each other, right? The current Israeli government and Hamas, and so they began to strangle Gaza. The idea was to blockade Gaza because this was subhuman behavior. And so that hardened the position within Hamas. Everybody on this trip, I don't think there was anybody who was particularly a Hamas supporter. We were supporting the people of Gaza and the civil societies in Gaza. So I think that's the short version of what happened.
Let's take it back just one more click, which is that, the United States spent a lot of time in the 60s and in the 60s in particular, Israel and the United States, destroying the left leadership in the Palestinian movement. So there were
They
actually
did it in a lot of places.
Yeah, and this is a cautionary
And then
tale,
they
and
got-
exactly. So they destroyed George Abbas and other movements. They assassinated people, and they foregrounded Fatah.
Yeah.
Then, when they got Fatah, they said, we can't deal with Yasser Arafat. We can't deal with these people, and they promoted Islamic fundamentalism, which they did in
Without
Afghanistan
question.
and other
They
places.
funded and supported it.
So Hamas is a creation, in a sense, of empire, and then they turn against that. So there's nothing that will satisfy them. Mostly what won't satisfy them is the Palestinian people having full recognition of their rights as human beings.
I would say even one more accelerated thing. The fact that there is a peace movement in Gaza and in the West Bank and in Jerusalem is not allowed. So there's plenty of evidence that the U.S. and Israel has been assassinating and destroying any leaders who stand for actually a nonviolent peace movement in those places, because the image of only terrorism, Palestinians are terrorists, is essential to the Israeli narrative, to being able to send young military kids from Israel in to occupy permanently and to destroy from the air these people. So you have to demonize a people in order to do what's being done. And I think, so peace movements are not allowed. Palestinian leadership is not allowed. But you also I want to put the share of blame on the lack of Palestinian leadership and on the rest of the Arab world. It isn't just Israel and the United States. The rest of the Arab world has sold out the Palestinians consistently. So
you are listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7. I'm Michael James. I'm talking with Bernardine Dohrn and Bill Ayers. We've got a couple more minutes left on this segment. I'm wondering if you would, I don't know how long you got to be in Gaza and once you got over the border. And I know there were some great stories and battles that went on to get there. But perhaps you could tell us about what it was like when you crossed over and what you actually got to see about life there and the people there.
we didn't get there, Michael. That's the whole thing. We wouldn't have been talking about this the way we have if we'd actually seen it. I mean, my whole hope was that we would have be able to bear witness to what actually it looks like there, because it is an open-air refugee camp. Gaza is described regularly as the world's largest open-air prison. It has been a refugee camp
soon to be rivaled by Haiti.
Surrounded by barbed wire and, Israeli military outposts now for 4 decades. And so, I really wanted to see what it's like now, but we did not get there. People did get in. They have written about it, the people who were in. I think if you Google anything having to do with Gaza or with Viva Palestina, who was the march from Europe that brought in humanitarian supplies, you'll see some of the narratives. I mean, watching Al Jazeera, looking at the writers we talked about, the human rights organizations in both Israel and Palestine have just a fabulous literature here.
What happened to the 2 busloads that went?
They got in. They did get in, those 2 busloads. They did spend 4 days there.
Oh, okay.
And, if you read Amira Haas, who's an Israeli journalist who lived for many years in Gaza, she's a renegade Israeli journalist. She had a very harsh article about what the Hamas authoritarian rule is like in Gaza, just another level of suffering for the people of Gaza.
Well, tell us briefly what Egypt's like. I mean, because that's a whole other issue. Then, it's all interconnected, but it seems to me that Israel sometimes, it doesn't take a very progressive stance, certainly. And just what's your sense of the people in Egypt? Were any of them involved in the demonstrations, et cetera?
Well, the people of Egypt are fantastic. It's a very young population, it's propulsive. 23 million people in Cairo. 23 million people in Cairo. I mean, you just have the sense of incredibly young, vibrant, highly educated and literate, computer-savvy population suffering under a miserable government, authoritarian, and Mubarak about to try to pass on ironclad rule to his son. On our way in from the airport, you pass these giant pictures, 5 stories high, of Mubarak, and our cab driver said to us, we were sort of pointing to it and laughing, and he said, well, Mubarak is very good at flying planes. Not so good at governing, very good at flying airplanes. So, you have people tolerating, like we did for so long, our stupid leadership, and being much smarter than that.
But it's like a lot of authoritarian countries you go to, and we kept trying to keep our eyes on Gaza, as you know, but as soon as we would try to do something, the military would emerge, and they were everywhere. So you could be on Tiananmen Square in China or in Beijing, or you could be in front of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and you could feel like, well, I don't see any police. Try to unfurl a banner and just see who comes out, So it has that feel, but the people themselves couldn't be more interesting, brilliant, wonderful, critical, and we had a terrific time.
Let me tell you 2 quick things. Everybody mentioned President Obama's speech at Cairo University now 11 months ago, which was, broadcast and aimed at the Arab world and the Muslim world. And I think, that seems a long time away now, but it was a really important idea that we could be in solidarity, not with just one nation or one tiny group of people, but really recognize the humanity of the rest of the world. The second thing is just an action you would like, Michael, I think. The French delegation went to the pyramids, faked somebody having a fainting spell down at the bottom. All the security forces ran there, and they ran up and unfurled a huge Free Gaza banner across the top of the pyramids and took pictures of it, and then blew those up into banners and posters. And so everywhere we went, there was this fabulous picture of the pyramid with a giant Free Gaza banner across the top of it.
That sounds great. I got to go to the pyramids. We'll see what we'll unfurl when we get there.
Okay.
I want to thank Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn for coming on live from the Heartland. It's always a pleasure. There's many more things we will talk about in the future, both on and off the air. And everyone stay tuned to more Live from the Heartland. I have Jeff Epton coming up.
The Heartland is our treasure here in Chicago, and everybody should support the Heartland.
All right on, sister. Okay, here we go. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland.